DeKalb, Texas. Population: just over 1,500 people, a place where neighbors wave, people know each other's names, and secrets rarely stay hidden. Or so everyone thought, because for years, one woman managed to hide a secret so enormous that even those closest to her never suspected the truth, a lie that would eventually spiral into obsession, and then murder. Tonight, the story of a woman who convinced nearly everyone she was expecting a child. There was only one problem. Investigators say she wasn't pregnant. And according to prosecutors, when her due date approached and her deception began to collapse, she made a decision so shocking that detectives still struggle to explain it. A decision that would leave one young mother dead, and a community asking a terrifying question: how well do we really know the people around us? Before she became the focus of a capital murder investigation, Taylor Parker seemed ordinary. Friends described her as friendly, outgoing, someone who enjoyed photography, someone who loved animals, someone who appeared deeply interested in family life. Nothing about her outward appearance suggested what investigators would later uncover. And that's what makes this case so unsettling. Because according to prosecutors, the most important part of this story wasn't what Parker did. It was what she spent months pretending to be. A pregnant woman. The deception was remarkably detailed. Friends would later tell investigators they believed she was expecting a baby. There were photographs, announcements, updates, conversations about the future, plans for motherhood. Some people even attended celebrations connected to the supposed pregnancy. Everything appeared real, but investigators later uncovered a very different reality, one that had been carefully hidden. And according to evidence presented in court, the lie was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain, because a due date was approaching. And eventually, every fake pregnancy requires a baby. Reagan Simmons Hancock was 21 years old, a newlywed, expecting a child, preparing for one of the happiest moments of her life. Friends described her as kind, family-oriented, excited about becoming a mother. What she couldn't know was that investigators would later allege she had become the solution to someone else's impossible problem. The two women had crossed paths before. Enough for Parker to know details about Reagan's pregnancy. Details prosecutors would later argue became critically important, because as investigators reconstructed events, they began to see signs of planning. Digital searches, messages, travel records, purchases. A trail that prosecutors argued showed preparation rather than impulse, and if they were right, the crime may have begun long before the day Reagan died. October 9th, 2020. Morning. Friends and family believed Parker was nearing the end of her own pregnancy, but investigators say she was running out of time. According to trial testimony, she traveled to Reagan's home. What happened next would become the subject of extensive forensic analysis. Investigators allege Parker attacked Reagan inside the residence. Evidence suggested a violent struggle, one that prosecutors argued demonstrated Reagan fought desperately to survive. By the time first responders became involved, the situation had become almost unimaginable. A young mother had been attacked, her unborn child taken, and the suspect was allegedly attempting to pass the infant off as her own. The details shocked even veteran investigators. This chapter plays almost like a thriller, because according to testimony, the murder investigation nearly unraveled in real time. Parker arrived claiming she had just given birth, but something wasn't right. Nurses noticed inconsistencies. Doctors noticed inconsistencies. Medical staff began asking questions Parker allegedly struggled to answer. Then came the realization. A woman claiming to have delivered a baby showed none of the expected physical signs of childbirth. The room changed instantly. What had seemed unusual suddenly felt impossible, and within hours, investigators were racing toward a horrifying conclusion.
It doesn't look like she had a baby.
It doesn't?
No.
Okay.
Does not look like she had a baby. Over here. Ready. So what happened?
Yes, ma'am. Nothing happened.
You didn't give birth.
This is her first.
Yeah. Thank you.
That means it's not your baby. So what happened? Like I told you, Taylor, this is my first rodeo. I've been doing this for nearly 27 years, working death cases. I know. Sometimes, you know, there's some people that do stuff just because they're very evil people. They're bad people. I've dealt with them. I've dealt with them my whole life. Cold-blooded murderers, serial killers, all of it. And I've done it. And here's the thing. You seem like a nice person. I think you may be a little bit confused about some things, and I get that. You know, the problem with cases, death cases especially, people automatically assume the worst. Okay, you know how it is. When people read the newspapers and stuff, they just see a certain amount of facts, and they automatically assume the worst. You know, essentially what we have a dead woman down in Texas, and you took the baby out of her, which caused her to die. And my question is Taylor a cold-blooded murderer? Or was it something else? I mean, sometimes people have, they go through depression and, some mental issues and things. Causes good people to make bad choices, right? And that's kind of where I'm here at today. I knew that doctor wasn't going to find anything. Because I already know a lot of things I asked, I already know the answer to before I ask. But one thing I'm trying to figure out is, why did this happen? What was going on?
As detectives worked backward through Parker's life, they discovered something astonishing. The fake pregnancy wasn't a recent lie. According to testimony and investigators, it had been maintained for months. The deeper detectives looked, the more deception they found. Fake documentation, misleading communications, fabricated stories, witnesses who genuinely believed they had been watching a pregnancy unfold. Instead, investigators say they had been watching an elaborate performance, one designed to survive right up until the moment it couldn't anymore. By the time the case reached court, prosecutors had assembled a mountain of evidence: digital records, witness testimony, forensic analysis, medical evidence. The prosecution's argument was straightforward. This was not a spontaneous act. It was the final stage of a deception that had been building for months. Defense attorneys challenged aspects of the state's case, but prosecutors focused on one theme repeatedly: planning, preparation, intent. And the question jurors had to answer was simple. Had Taylor Parker engineered this crime to preserve a lie? The verdict arrived: guilty. For Reagan's family, the conviction represented accountability, but it could never restore what had been taken: a daughter, a wife, a mother, a future. The case remains one of the most disturbing examples of deception-driven homicide in modern American criminal history. Not because it involved a stranger, not because it involved a serial killer, but because so much of it was hidden in plain sight. Most true crime stories begin with violence. This one began with a lie repeated so often, and for so long, that eventually it became a reality in the mind of the person telling it, until reality itself stood in the way. And according to prosecutors, someone died because of it. Even now, years later, investigators, psychologists, and ordinary people continue asking the same question. At what point does deception become obsession? And at what point does obsession become deadly? Because in this case, the answer came far too late.